Well, I love Advent. I love this time of year. I actually don't even mind if it's cold for these 4 weeks, but Texas cold, obviously. I love everything about Advent. I love the colors. I love this stole. This was a stole that was a gift to me at my ordination from my godparents, and it says, "To our Nick, may God's blessings and His light shine through you. We love you, your godparents." I love this stole, and I just love the design of it, and I love this star. I only get to wear it 4 times a year, right? Why can't this one be green and I get to wear it for half the year? But I absolutely love this stole, and I just love the vision of a star. And the reason I didn't wear it all today is because I love the vision of a star in the sky, right? It just looks better up against the black than it does up against the white. This light that guides the way, this small light in the darkness that provides so much light. If you haven't heard, I'm doing a podcast now. I released the second one earlier this week. And my friend Andy and we talked about Philippians 2. In Philippians 2, Paul writes, "Shine like the stars. Shine like the stars." And I just love that image of shining in the darkness. Today's readings, we had a light mentioned twice. Isaiah 2, verse 5. "O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." In Romans 13, verse 12. "Let us lay aside the work of darkness and put on the armor of light." The armor of light. Well, what does that mean? So then you read verse 13. "Let us live honorably as in the day, not in reveling and drunkenness, not in debauchery and licentiousness, not in quarreling and jealousy." So I ask, well, is Paul trying to describe what that means by describing what it isn't? Right? Sometimes that's the only way to really describe something is, well, what isn't it? And so then I started reading through, drunkenness. Having a few drinks is okay. When I went to see Rick Steves, someone asked him, what's the easiest way to engage the young adults? And he said, buy them a drink. It's true. But drinking and drunkenness are different things. Debauchery and licentiousness, the sinful desires of the flesh. We don't talk about that very often from here. We have a mixed audience. But intimacy is a wonderful gift. Intimacy is a wonderful gift when it's in a relationship that includes commitment and companionship. Quarreling, unholy disagreement or argument. I would argue that most, if not all, of our disagreements are unholy. They are not of the Holy Spirit. And then jealousy. It's dangerous when we look at the blessings of others as things that have been denied to ourselves, and when we are not content with what we have. And so I say, well, if we don't do these things, will we have the armor of light? That's what I was thinking. That's kind of what I was going to preach on, but then I realized, well, that's not it. That's not what Paul is saying at all. Actually, Paul's quite smart in that he's actually describing the world. He's describing the world as it was 2,000 years ago and the world as it is today. He's describing from 2,000 years ago the world as it is today. Drunkenness. Alcohol is a big business. I'm not sure if you know that. Last year, in the U.S., $253 billion were spent on alcohol. $253 billion. Just to put that in context, this year, they're forecasting that Americans are going to spend $184 billion on computers. We spend more on alcohol than on computers. And we spend $2 billion, what companies do, on advertising for alcohol alone. $2 billion. It's a big business. And some people, it's difficult for them to manage it. And for some people, drunkenness ruins lives. Drunkenness ruins lives. I'll never forget being 7 years old, staying at my grandparents' house when the call came in the middle of the night that my cousin Billy was killed by a drunk driver. He was a tow truck driver. And I think about his 2 children and how for the last 33 years they've lived without a father. Drunkenness ruins lives. Think about Bishop Bruce Burnside, an ELCA bishop in the Milwaukee area, who a few years ago went to church to lead worship, to preach, then went out to lunch, had too many drinks. On his way home, he ran over a jogger. He killed her. Now he's in prison for 10 years. Drunkenness ruins lives. And you don't have to drive to ruin your life. I mean, the best case scenario is that if you're drunk, you might say something silly. The worst case scenario is that you say something that you're going to regret and can't take back. Drunkenness ruins lives and relationships. So I say to you, if you need help, get it. If you need help, get it. And if you are in recovery, you are awesome. You will forever have my admiration. Drunkenness is a big part of our world. And the sinful desires of the flesh. I'm only going to spend a minute here. This is going to get uncomfortable. I'm sure we've all seen how this rips families apart. How it rips friendships apart, extended families apart. Not just families, though. The church that I grew up in 1987, they had a pastor who had an inappropriate relationship with the church secretary, and 32 years ago. And the pastor who came here and baptized Caroline, they brought in right afterwards, and he was there for a long time, and I still talk to him. But there's still a sense of disbelief in that congregation. There's still a sense of distrust. There's still a sense of, I can't believe what she did to that wonderful man. 30-some years later. And the reality is that everyone who was there then will have to leave or die before it is no longer part of their DNA. It rips families apart, and it does the same to communities. Quarreling, unholy disagreement, or argument. I don't think Paul would like social media. He'd have some things to say. I spent some time a couple weeks ago arguing with strangers on Twitter about who was the best baseball player in 1987. I was arguing that Alan Trammell was the best baseball player in 1987. He hit .343, 28 home runs, 109 runs, 105 runs batted in, and he was playing for the Detroit Tigers, who had 98 wins, the most wins in the major leagues. And he played shortstop, which is a very valuable position. He came in second, by the way, in the MVP voting, but let's not get into that. And the other person was arguing that Tony Gwynn was the best player in baseball in 1987, because he hit .370. So he did have a higher batting average. But he only hit 7 home runs instead of 28. And he scored 119 runs, where Alan Trammell only had 105. But he only had 54 runs batted in, where Alan Trammell had 105. And his team only won 65 games. They were one of the worst teams in baseball. And he played right field, which is not as valuable as a shortstop. And I asked myself, why am I doing this? And then I realized, I'm doing this because I'm right. We like being right, especially when we know we're right. And we like being in charge. We like letting others know that we know more than them, or that we have more experience, or that we're more of an expert. And so, we like to be right. But there's no place for that in the church. If you're visiting here today, I'd be lying to you if I said that we have no quarreling here at Abiding Grace. But we don't have a lot. We don't have a lot. And that is something that we can be proud of. But going forward, let's just say this. If you have concerns, complaints, suggestions about anything, just come to me. If you want to complain about the Altar Guild, and I say that because there's nothing you could ever complain about the Altar Guild. That's why I'm using them as an example. Because the Altar Guild is wonderful, and without them we don't have worship. Come to me. If you don't think Vanessa's a good enough singer, come to me. I'm sure the line will be forming after worship. Quarreling, there's just no place for quarreling among God's people. And jealousy. It's interesting that Thanksgiving is this day where we gather and we're thankful for all the things that we have. And 24 hours later, we're out trying to buy new stuff because the stuff we have isn't good enough. It's the time of the year where we come up with lists. People ask, what do you want? And so we look through things, catalogs. I don't do catalogs anymore. Yeah, there's catalogs, right? And so we would come up with the stuff that we want, and we start to hope, well, maybe I'll get that, right? Michelle said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I just want a golf trip to Scotland. And she said, oh, good, you just got that. I said, no, I want another one. Which is why it's so good that we're doing this Advent Count Your Blessings thing. To balance that. To balance that desire for stuff with the reality that we are already blessed. We already have more than we need. God has been so good to us. So to try and overcome that with counting our blessings. Drunkenness, sinful desires, quarreling, jealousy. This is the world that we live in. This is the world that we live in. Every time you turn on the television, you're going to see commercials that try to make you want stuff. And they're going to try and make you want stuff in different ways. They're going to appeal to your visual senses. This is the darkness that we are called to shine in. We put on the armor of light by looking at the world and saying, you know what? I'm going to choose God's truth and God's ways. I was at the movie theater last week, you may have heard, but while I was walking in, I heard this mother speaking to her son. It was dark, and she said, well, the lights need to be brighter when it gets darker. The lights need to be brighter when it gets darker. And me, someone who, likes to be right, wanted to say, no, actually, the lights don't need to be brighter when it gets darker. If your lights come on in your car while you're driving, you'll notice that the light in your clock actually gets dimmer. Because when it gets darker, you don't need light to be as bright. And I say that to you, you don't need to be perfect to be the light of God in the world. If we just try, we will shine bright enough. We will shine bright enough. That's why I didn't wear an alb today. Because I love the way this looks up against the black compared to the white. You never know what the Holy Spirit is doing in the lives of the people around you. You never know when you will be like the star that the Magi followed to find Jesus. You never know when you're going to be someone's one true light, one true bright spot in a sky of darkness. So, dear friends, may you shine as bright as you are able. May you shine for all the world to see, and may you shine as only those who know God's love can shine. Amen.